Welcome. Happy Thursday. Today we're going to talk about the Booth MBA application, and I'm sure all of you are quite excited about the new essay question that just was released uh, from uh, from Booth. So, as you navigate this next step, especially if you're applying to round one, but also in round two, it's important to remember that Booth is not just another top MBA program. It tests how you think, how you decide, and how you frame your growth. At CA Admissions, we don't just work with candidates from McKinsey, Meta, Goldman Sachs, although we do work with them as well, or boutique funds or regional firms. We work with individuals who are asking what's not landing. That's an important question that every one of our clients is thinking through as they navigate this next step. And this session takes the insights that we've gained over close to a decade of working with high achieving MBA candidates, and break down exactly why strong applicants miss at Booth. It's not because they lack credentials, although there are some that do, but when we're talking here, it's really about individuals who have the credentials. And it's what we have found is that because they haven't structured their candidacy with the strategic clarity that Booth is expecting of strong candidates who succeed in their program. So if you're aiming for Booth, whether round one, round two, or next year, understand that metrics that matter most isn't prestige of your company or your undergraduate or graduate studies. It's how well you think. That is what Booth is evaluating. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So top tier firms, strong stats, global exposure. These are now the baseline, elementary in a candidate's application. Booth is looking for individuals, like I said, who have clear intentionality in terms of understanding where they've come and where they're going. They screen for structured thinkers with conviction. So if your story lacks that logic, you're invisible in this pool of high achievers that they receive in terms of applicants. Booth wants maturity, independent thought, and an honest lens of your own growth. They do have a program that is very customizable, and without this intentionality and this clarity, it becomes very difficult for you to succeed in this program. So your story needs to make sense in the context of your trajectory and Booth's ethos in terms of how they operate. So this is a school that really rewards individuals who are intentional and have clarity of how they will leverage the resources there to get to the next step in their career. And your job is to communicate that effectively in your applications, in your essays that you are responding to in the whole of the Booth application, not just the formal essays, but also the short answer questions. I will say one of the things that I have found over the years is that Booth is very allergic to shallow polish applications. They want individuals who think in patterns, and the admission team is looking for signals of intellectual maturity, critical thinking, and personal accountability. That will come through everything that you talk about in all of your essays and all of your short answer questions at Booth. One can tell, a logical progression of things, but that's not a story. People don't, admission teams at Booth especially, but also other schools, are not admitting individuals who will just walk through the resume and talk through that logical progression. It's the thinking, how you think, how you solve problems, how you work with others, that makes a huge difference in your application. And then this year's new prompt around a photo that reflects how you engage with others is definitely a new and clear filter they're testing emotional intelligence under the guise of creativity. So if your essays feels curated instead of authentic, it's definitely going to fail. And your job is to make sure that obviously that there is an element of performance in this application process, but your job is to really cultivate an authentic application that's reflective of what you want to get out of your experience there. And one of the things that strong applicants make drastic mistakes on, especially individuals who are in industries that are high buzzword, they default to industry jargon. Or they look at, I'm working at JP Morgan, I'm working at Meta, I'm working at Amazon. These are prestige companies, and assume that the Booth is going to connect the dots between the fact that you work there and your contributions and your impact, your growth, your development, your thinking process. But one thing is important that you understand is that Booth doesn't infer. They will evaluate what's directly presented. They're not going to sit there and analyze, what are you trying to say? How are you framing it? Connecting the dots. They genuinely don't have time to do that. And they shouldn't be doing that, because you are a leader who is going to be influencing and leading people to take on new initiatives, to work on the next level of growth. And you need to be able to communicate effectively in your applications. So goals that sound high impact but lack connectivity, like that connecting tissue from past experiences, are definitely going to read very hollow in your application. Essays that tell stories without unpacking the thought process definitely signal a lack of self-awareness. And recommenders who highlight competence but can't speak of your growth leave the admission team with no projection forward. They can't see how are you going to continue to grow with the help of Booth. So while titles and promotions definitely indicate growth, what Booth cares about is whether you can make sense of your own path, articulate how Booth is the next strategic level for your growth, and not just another stop in your collection of prestigious brand names. So if your application feels packaged, it tells Booth you haven't built the internal clarity to self-direct in their environment. And given that they only require one class and everything else is curated based on your needs and what you're looking to get, that is hugely important in their evaluation criteria. And if they feel that you don't have that self-directedness ready, like you haven't thought through this entire process, they definitely are not going to take the risk in admitting a candidate who hasn't thought through that depth. The way we work here at SIA is we conduct a top-down audit of your candidacy, dissecting not just what you've done, but how each move supports a cohesive strategic arc. When your materials lack that signal, it tells Booth your growth is accidental and not intentional. And that's definitely not what you want to do. Booth doesn't reward applicants for sounding mature. It rewards those who operate with maturity, who understand how their past decisions connect to their goals, and how Booth fits into the logic with intention, fits into how you see leveraging their resources to get to the next level. And we help candidates reconstruct their candidacy to compete in that matrix, that decision matrix that Booth operates under. That means translating ambiguity into structure, isolating signals from noise, and ensuring every asset, whether that's your essay, short answer questions, resume, letters of recommendation, work in your favor in that strategic presentation of your full narrative. So I'm going to share 2 stories of clients we have supported to get into Booth. We do help a lot of clients every single year, but here are just 2 stories. This particular client worked in the luxury retail space, and one of the things that she needed was framing. On paper, she was creative, professional, of course, from a luxury brand that is a household name, essentially. But that narrative lacked analytic sharpness and business orientation that Booth is, or rather demands, of applicants. So we repositioned her story to emphasize how she used customer segmentation data and campaign analytics to drive regional sales strategies that converted in an authentic way for the region that this client was working in. Her pivot was grounded on how she thought and not just what she did, not just what the outcome of those campaigns was, but it's her strategic thinking and the long-term view that she brought to the table is what was interesting to Booth. And we reoriented her candidacy around Booth's data-forward marketing and behavior science platforms. She definitely wasn't asking Booth to elevate her. She was showing how she's going to use Booth to lead global strategy at scale. And Booth bought that vision. She was admitted to Booth and several other M7 programs because she presented a very structured, methodical thinking. She owned her narrative, she owned her story, and it was very much an authentic presentation of who she was. Now, here's another candidate who wasn't coming from a top feeder, no global brand, no fast track promotion, no Ivy League degree, but he was something or he had something that most applicants didn't or don't, especially in initial phases. He had strategic self-awareness. He knew where he lacked depth and what Booth would offer to close those gaps. So what we did is we helped this applicant move away from proving his worth, which was oftentimes, it's actually what we see applicants do, especially those who are not coming from prestigious brand name organizations. And we helped move towards demonstrating that he was aligned, his thinking was aligned with how Booth thinks. His goals weren't about prestige, they were about, they were quite operationally sound. His essays weren't stylized, they were structured, they were direct, and articulated Booth's strengths in leadership, analytics, and entrepreneurial thinking, and how that would add value to his long-term vision in terms of what he was looking to do. And his rationale outperformed flashier profiles because it definitely made sense. Now, he was admitted to both Booth and Kellogg, and he chose Booth over Kellogg because he felt that he aligned more. And I think this came through in his application, obviously, because he was able to get into the program. In terms of what we do is we are strategic operators here at SIA. While editing is an element of the application, editors polish what's already there. That's how I want you to think about it. What we do is we interrogate what's missing, what's misaligned, and what needs to be structurally re-engineered to meet the standards of top-tier admission committees in terms of what they're looking for, whether that's Booth, HBS, Wharton, Stanford, any of these schools. So our clients don't just want to look better on paper. They want to think more clearly about who they are and how they're going to show up in business school ecosystem that they choose. We challenge the assumptions baked into the narratives and rebuild them with logic and intentionality based on, of course, the schools that we are supporting clients with. So if you are a high performer who has high aspirations to attend an M7, T15, T10 school, but fear that your application reads generic, maybe you don't feel that you are competitive enough, I encourage you to reach out to discuss how we can support your application. We have a few ways that you can work with us, whether that's through our comprehensive coaching, which is a bespoke model where we work very much with a hand-holding methodology through the entire process, beginning to end. This is a quite intense process, but it's definitely one where you're guided by experts in this field. The MBA Strategy Circle, it's a bi-weekly strategic briefing where you have an opportunity to come in and ask your questions as you're navigating your own applications, and also learn from others' questions that maybe you haven't thought about, which will help you strengthen your own application as you go through this. This is for individuals who want less hand-holding and want to do a lot more on their own. And then, of course, the hourly service, you have an opportunity to choose your own adventure in terms of what you are looking to work on. All of these are great for a certain kind of applicant in terms of what they're looking for in this application process. So if the presentation spoke to what you need to fix, definitely I encourage you to book a call. And right now, what I'm going to do is we have about 13 minutes left, and we're going to open the floor to questions so that I can help provide some guidance as we go through this and as you navigate the next 2 months, I guess, until the deadline for round 1 at Booth. So before we go there, I want to just remind you guys that if you find the content of this presentation helpful, I invite you to give this video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and our other channels wherever you are joining us from. And of course, ask your questions live here so I can directly answer it during this session. We will be monitoring this for the next week. So if you have questions, if you're watching this as a replay, I encourage you to write your questions and we'll respond accordingly. Excellent. So we're going to start with questions that came through the registration while you guys are writing your own questions. And also, as a reminder, next week we're going to talk about MIT. So if MIT is on your list, definitely register for that event. Okay, so let's go to the first question. What common patterns or red flags do you see in essays from strong candidates that still fail to convert? This is an excellent question, and when I saw it, I was quite excited to answer it live. One of the biggest red flags that I see applicants make is providing a summary of a class or a club or anything that you mentioned that is Booth specific, and instead of presenting it from the context of what are you excited about it and how is that supporting your goals. And there's a nuance in that presentation. One assumes that the reader doesn't know what the class offers, or it's really showing that I know what you're offering and I know what this class offers. And the other lens is I know that these classes are valuable and hear how it's valuable to me specifically with my own intentions and with my own aspirations. The latter is the one that wins all the time, hands down. And you're able to answer the whys because Booth is very much anchored on your why. So if you say, I want to take this class because of XYZ, why has to be embedded in there. And depending on what you say next, another why may be embedded in there as well. So depth is really important at Booth, and there's a reason why they don't give you a word count maximum, they give you a word count minimum. So they want you to answer the question in a minimum number of words, and they want you then to also reflect deeply about why it is that you're choosing to attend Booth and how it supports your overall development and professional growth. So if I want to apply to schools with different cultures, like Booth versus Kellogg or Wharton versus Stanford, how should I adjust my messaging without coming off as inconsistent? Well, one of the important things to remember is that the schools are not sharing applications, right? This is not the undergraduate where you have the Common App. This is, each school has its own values, its own structures. Now, it is in your best interest to make sure that you have a cohesive narrative, because if you don't, you're going to, when you get invited to interview, you're going to forget what was told in one story and what was in another, right? That's why this strategy is really important from the get-go, that is sound across all schools, or across most schools. Most exclusion being Stanford. But even so, your core value of who you are, you still want to maintain that. What's important is that you identify a value that you share with your target schools and anchor on that. You're not, I mean, everyone is different, right? Everyone has different perspectives, experiences. And the more you can anchor on something that resonates with who you are, the more authentic your application is. So your job is to really anchor on one of the core values that the school maintains. This way you can sound authentic to that school, and it's authentic to you because that is a core value that you share with them. So you're not focusing on a core value that doesn't resonate with you at all, which it's going to be very evident to the admission team reader if this is authentic or not, because they see thousands of applications every single year and can spot those nuances very easily. Excellent. Let's move to the next question. And if you guys have specific questions to your own application, I encourage you to write them in the comments of whichever platform you're joining us from. We won't share your name on screen, so when the replay is live, your question won't show up there. So feel free to ask your question this way. It's not it will remain anonymous. So let's continue. So when reviewing my resume, how can I ensure that my leadership impact is conveyed without sounding repetitive or over self-promotional? Well, your resume is intended to be self-promotional, right? It is intended to demonstrate what your achievements have been, what your greatest achievements have been. It's not, for most of you who have less than 10 years of work experience, your resume is going to be a one-pager, and I'm sure you have done more things that can fit into one page. So your job is to be selective in terms of what you're integrating. One of the things that we do here at SIA is we focus a lot on your goals as a foundational piece, and everything else that follows the goals is anchored on those goals. So your resume does need to showcase transferability. So how you present your stories is going to definitely be impacted by your goals specifically. Not that you're going to include stories that are made up, that are not true, but obviously every story has many different lenses that it can be told from. And the job, our job here at SIA, that's how we see our coaching methodology to be helpful, is be able to help the candidates navigate that presentation of, how are you connecting your past experiences to your future. And it's quite challenging if now all of a sudden, and most of you experience this, you're asked to present your story to someone else and showcase why are you so amazing? Why should we admit you? And that's not oftentimes very comfortable thing that applicants go through. So you do have to sound a bit self-promotional, but you still have to be anchored on your experiences, your achievements. We do have actually on our YouTube, we have resume-specific sessions that we've hosted that you can go there and review and watch and integrate into your resume development as you're going through this process. Excellent. Next question. So I know my stats are competitive, but how do I ensure my story stands out from candidates with similar backgrounds? Yeah, so that's why you can't rely on stats. Stats alone are not going to move the needle. What you need to do is to dig deep into your own experiences and showcases why your experiences are unique. How are they unique? How do you think? How you show up in the team environments, in projects that you work on? What is the perspective you take and that you bring to the table? That's going to be different from the person who sits 2 cubicles down from you, who's also applying to business school from the same company with similar resume to you. So your job is to dig deeper and be able to illustrate who you are as a thinker, who you are as a leader, and how your experiences have influenced your growth and the next chapter in your career. So we're going to do one last question. So if I want to pivot to new industry post MBA, how can I position my current leadership skills and transferable skills in a way that's credible to Booth? I would say you want to look at what experiences have you had, and you have to dig deeper. So please, for candidates who really want to take this process seriously, you have to dive deeper than the surface level. What does a PM do? What does a project manager do, right? You have to dig deeper into your experiences and how this will move the needle. Then you're going to say, you're going to go through what your experiences have been, where are correlations, because you're not going to be presenting a project manager experience when you are not there yet. That's what you're looking to do, right? So you're going to look at what your experiences have been and where are some nuances of transferable skills that you can highlight. I would say definitely look at our resume and look at our goals discussions that we have videos on our YouTube channel that can help with this framing and repositioning, where you can dive deeper into how to seamlessly present this. But it does have to be anchored on your own experiences, because that's, especially for Booth, that's what they're looking for. Excellent. So guys, don't forget to register for next week's session for MIT if you're considering applying. If you have a friend who's applying to MIT, share this link with them, or share our YouTube channel with them, and drop any questions that you may have, especially in the registration. There's a section where you can ask your question or what you want to be discussed. That's really helpful for us as we prepare our presentations, to integrate those questions that you guys have into our presentation, so that whether you watch it live or you watch it as a replay, your question will be answered in the process of the presentation itself. Excellent. Well, I wish you all good luck in this application process. And if you need support, you know that we're here to support you guys. And you have a few different ways that you can join us and get the strategic insight that you need to compete at a top tier business school, whether that's M7, T10, T15, or T20. That's our core area of focus. Until next week, have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend.